Hi everyone, this is Manas Ram from Niva Sciences, and today we are in conversations with Her Holiness Divyanandaprana Mataji from Sri Ramakrishna Sharada Mission. She is the editor of Samvit, a magazine being released by Shri Sharada Math regularly. She is also a prolific speaker who speaks across India and also in various other parts of the world. She is a regular speaker in IITs like Kharagpur, Kanpur, also Bombay, Madras. She has spoken in IISc Bangalore and also across several medical colleges in Bombay and Pune. She's also lectured across Vedantic societies in US and universities like London University, Purdue University, Logan College, etc. She talks a lot about mind management and subjective sciences, which makes her a very sought after speaker across the world. She has extensively studied Vedanta, Yoga Sutras, and Brahma Sutras, which comes in very handy while giving talks across the world. Without much ado, Namaste Mataji, welcome to the show.
Namaste. Namaste. Namaste to everyone, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Mataji. For the benefit of the audience, this is a three-part series, and in the first series, we're going to be talking about Sri about the relevance of Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda in today's world. So, for people who do not know much about Sri Ramakrishna was a mystic who was born in India in 19th century. It was a different time where there was no technology and stuff, but together with his divine consort, Sri Sharada Devi, he left an indelible mark across India. So much so that even to this day, you visit many households in India, you'll see their pictures, and people are exposed to their philosophy in some form or the other. So, coming to the discussion itself, Mataji, the first question I have is it's been over a century and a half since Sri Ramakrishna's time. What is the relevance of Sri Ramakrishna's discourse and also Swamiji's teachings for today's modern seeker?
Yeah, what a nice question. The relevance of these teachings are, they are permanent. They are always there. For the simple reason, the fountain of truth. Every age, every clime, every nation, it will seek it. The people of any nation will be sensitive to these truths because these are the eternal truths of our existence. They are not time bound.
Yeah.
And as such, like if you actually go into the Vedas, you will see that why we call the Vedas eternal is due to the fact that they are talking of certain principles which are eternal, which are not bound by time. Like, for example, the laws of physics, they apply everywhere and at any time they are true, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it is something like that. Spiritual principles are something like that. When you talk of impersonal principles, and when the realization is of something of the nature of transcending merely time bound, space bound, causality bound limitations, then it naturally becomes relevant for all time. So the teachings of Ramakrishna Vivekananda are like that. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna lived his life in samadhi, as it were. He lived in God consciousness, far transcending the limitations of the human mind.
Mm-hmm.
So then, whatever he spoke, his words carried immense significance, and it's really like a light being poured into this world from the deepest um, regions or realms of super consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So it just brings luminosity into minds even now. And since I work across a huge cross section of the young population of India, I see that so many minds are sensitive to this. So I am one person who does not believe the world is going to dogs.
Yeah, true. Until there's spiritual light in the world, there is a hope, there is a way for humanity.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. My next question is about mysticism. Sri Ramakrishna, as you already mentioned, was mostly in Samadhi. He was a mystic. But when uh, Sri Vivekananda came through, he tried to demystify a lot of these concepts. He brought more sense to what is universe, what is consciousness, and he tried to explain them in a logical way. Now, which way is better for a modern seeker? Follow the mysticism or already explained philosophies?
The interpretation given by Vivekananda would appear more scientific and relevant. For the simple reason, Vivekananda explained the same mystical concepts in a modern idiom, and he used a scientific secular paradigm to do the same. And he could relate with the modern mind because Vivekananda was educated, like he was a graduate of Kolkata University, and not that he was, at one point in his life, he was also an agnostic. He passed through the entire range of doubts and the meaninglessness of modern existence, which today's youngsters are suffering. So, and he did not approach Sri Ramakrishna as a believer or with full of faith and nothing like that. He was, in fact, he was something like Arjun was to Krishna. He has asked all our questions for us. He doubted Sri Ramakrishna's realizations, and because of these facts, whatever he understood, and then, of course, through his own personal spiritual realizations, whatever he uncovered, that has deep meaning to the modern mind. As for Sri Ramakrishna, he was steeped in God consciousness, and his life is actually the greatest inspiration for yogis, for sadhaks who are in tune with what he was established in. So that makes a lot of sense. When we study the life of Sri Ramakrishna, we are inspired to do sadhana. God becomes real to us.
Yeah,
And when you study Vivekananda, you will see that those very life-giving waters of pure spirituality are coming in a applicable form, in a modern format to the modern youth, so that we can use those principles in everyday life. Because everybody does not have a completely spiritual mindset, but they want these principles of spirituality to sort of become practical in their lives so as to achieve their goals, so as to manage their minds, and a whole lot of these modern problems which our youth face. So for that, I think Vivekananda becomes very, very relevant. He brings these principles in a very scientific format, and I have seen that in our interaction with the youth population, a whole lot of them have problems with negativity, mind management, stress management, all this for the simple reason they are not acquainted with their own minds. So spirituality brings you these life skills, getting acquainted with your own mind, understanding yourself, uncovering higher awareness, decluttering the mind, or whatever. Well, in traditional terms, we used to call it purifying mind and all that. But it gives you techniques. Spirituality gives you techniques which help you achieve all this. And I think that way, religion itself, the essence of religion is demystified and made applicable to the modern age.
true.
So Vivekananda is very, very important for our times.
Yes, agree, totally agree. So now moving on to youth and the problems they face. So in today's world, there are a lot of distractions. It could be the internet, it could be anything. Even with internet, there are a lot of people who are watching good things, some people are watching bad things, some people not so good things. So for a modern day seeker, how can he overcome these distractions and try to find what is the goal of his life?
Right. Yeah, that's the number one distraction for our youth today. That they have so many gadgets in their hands, and that's why the focus is it's totally scattered. And even at a young age, children are being diagnosed with ADHD and all these problems. It's because of the level of exposure. Before the brain can process a certain amount of information, it is bombarded with a whole lot of information which may even be opposite to what it has got acquired. So all this causes these attention deficit problems. How will a young person try to maintain his focus and achieve the goal of his life? I would say it is very important in this age to choose what we wish to expose ourselves to, and that lies right in our hands. to have a very strong will, a deep goal orientation, a desire to attain our goals to such a measure that we are able to track distraction, even the subliminal distraction of the subconscious mind, and put it aside.
So,
Yeah, for this requires some amount of spiritual practice and introspection.
so what are those spiritual tools which people can use?
Right. So usually, what we suggest is some form of yoga. By yoga, I definitely don't mean just the yogasanas. I mean quietening techniques to quieten the mind, to attain a certain degree of stillness so that you can understand your own being much better. You can understand what exactly you want in life. And your thought world is regulated, not going in different directions, opposite directions all the time, and taking you away from your goals. So, for this to happen, a certain quietude is required in the mind. And yoga ensures this because the very purpose of yoga techniques is to bring the mind to a standstill, at least for the fraction of a second, so that you are able to see clearly what is beyond mind, what exactly I want in life, and how do I want my life to unfold.
Hmm. True. So you spoke about quietening the mind quite a bit. So what is the single biggest obstacle in today's world for people? Because when you see for today's society, a lot of people are lost in terms of so many of them do not even know that there could be a spiritual seeking and that can be followed. So what is the
Yeah,
single most obstacle which is preventing today's youth from discovering themselves?
yeah. I think it is the lack of a spiritual culture in our society. This is one thing, and overexposure to all these gadgets, which are taking our young people into strange addictions, which we didn't know of 25 years back. When I was in college, I didn't have internet addiction and FOMO, and all these things weren't I never even thought of them actually. So now today's students have such a lot of all this and deep inner insecurity and anxiety that they are losing something by not uh, going according to their peers, and they require more and more information and not real knowledge but information, racing after information, and overexposure at all levels,
Hmm.
and a kind of media exposure which is not very healthy. Even that is a huge problem to our modern people when their emotions are just developing and blossoming. If they are exposed to a lot of violence and trash, then that can cause that is very debilitating actually to the
Yeah,
human mind.
true.
So to choose the right course amongst all this and to remain focused, that's the huge challenge. We can help our young people by inspiring in them um, a goal which is really worth striving for.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So after the time of Sri Swami Vivekananda, it's been over 1 century and 20 years. So a lot of things have changed in the world, the way humanity approaches economics, the way the world is set up. A lot of things have changed. How has the approach towards spirituality changed?
I think the approach to spirituality has changed in a big way. In the sense, a century ago, religion and its traditional practices meant a lot to a large, you can say, percentage of our people, not just in India but everywhere around the world. And with the changes in times, that is not there today. In fact, our young people, especially in the urban areas, they take pride in being non-religious, and many of them proclaim that they are spiritual but not religious. So whatever they understand by that spirituality, so a kind of secular spirituality is taking over, and yet I see a deep level of sincerity in these young people. And if they are told about the impersonal principles of life building principles of religion. They are very open to them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say that in a way, the world is marching towards a saner place, a saner society, where unnecessary quarrels and differences on based on religion are minimizing, because we understand that the essence is the principle and that has to be extracted many times, like the grain being extracted from the husk and then applied. And every religion at its core, you see, with the coming of Sri Ramakrishna, this is what has happened. A sense of the unity and the fundamental truth of every religion being the same has come about, at least in the educated population around the world.
Yes.
So this is a huge step, because a lot of dissension, a lot of differences used to exist in the name of religion. And young people could not see this difference between spirituality and religion. So this is I would say, a positive step.
Yes, true. Especially after Swami Vivekananda's visit to Chicago, a lot of people
Right.
understood that, every religion pretty much talks, the basic principles are the same. So this
Right.
pretty much brings us to the end of the first series, but I want to ask you one more question. Say,
Yeah.
if Swami Vivekananda was to come into the world today, what do you think
Right.
his message would be for the world?
Yeah, first of all, his message would be that we focus on the essentials of character building and nation building, and leave aside the unnecessary problems we are creating for ourselves. And administration should not be about creating problems and solving them. It should be about taking a step forward. And for that, Vivekananda always insisted on character development in our youth.
Yes.
And that would contribute to nation building, no matter where you are staying, what you are doing. So, if this fundamental trait of our young people, if this is inculcated, I think this would always be Vivekananda's message to our young people. And he had great hope in this youthful energy. I'm sorry when I see people considering this energy to be sort of perverted or not up to the mark, and they compare it with their times. You see, always the world is going to move forward, and every generation will find its own ways of doing things. And we should be able to give and inspire eternal principles in their minds. That is all. Their technique of executing it, bringing it into their lives will be different, obviously. Every generation will be different from the previous generation. And to make sure that they find meaning in the values which we have held dear, that sanskar has to be given through inspiration again, not simply through teaching. So if we can do that, I think Vivekananda's purpose would be fulfilled. He would want only character making as the first thing for nation building.
That's nice to hear, Mataji. It was a very enlightening discussion. So this brings us to the end of part one. I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.